All right, what if I told you that you could actually learn Japanese, maybe even get fluent, with just 10 minutes of listening a day? I know, it sounds a little crazy, right? But today, we're going to dive into a method that promises exactly that. We're talking no textbooks, no memorization, just pure intuitive learning. Look, if you've ever tried to learn a new language, you know the drill. The endless flashcards, those grammar rules that just make your head spin, and maybe the worst part is, after all that work, you still can't really understand native speakers. It is so frustrating. But what if the problem isn't you? What if it's the method? Well, there's a more natural way to learn, a way that actually works with your brain's built-in language learning software instead of against it. And it lets you skip all that frustration. So what is this big secret? It's actually super simple. The whole idea is to learn Japanese the exact same way you learned your first language as a kid. I mean, you didn't study it from a book, right? No, you were just immersed in it. You just listened, and eventually you started to understand. This process actually has a name. It's called mother tongue acquisition, and it makes so much sense when you think about it. As a baby, you weren't sitting there with grammar charts. You were just listening, picking things up from context. And then bam, the language just emerged. That's exactly what this method tries to copy. And this is where it really clicks. The goal here is to understand Japanese intuitively. You're not trying to cram your brain with vocabulary lists. Instead, you're developing a feel for the language. You know that gut feeling for what sounds right? That's what you get just from hearing it over and over again. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work? What are you going to be doing for those 10 minutes every day? Well, it breaks down into a really simple 3-step plan. First, you just listen. You play a short, simple audio story again and again until the sounds start to feel familiar. Then, step 2, you start shadowing. That just means you listen and you speak along with the recording. This is amazing for your pronunciation. And finally, once you're comfortable, you crank up the speed to 1.5 times. This trains your brain to keep up and understand Japanese at a natural, conversational pace. What you're really doing here is building muscle memory for Japanese sounds. It's all about that repetition. Eventually, your brain's response just becomes automatic. And this is the magic part. You stop translating everything in your head. You just understand instantly. And maybe the best part is how incredibly simple this is. I love this analogy from the course material. The course is designed like a foolproof camera. You just press play. There's no homework, no prep work. You literally just press play for 10 minutes. That's it. All right, so let's get into the science of why this works so well. It's pretty fascinating, actually, and it all comes down to which part of your brain you're training. So your typical language class, that's all left brain work. It's analytical, it's about rules, it's about memorization. But this listening method, this flips the script. It engages your right brain, which is an absolute powerhouse for things like sound, rhythm, and recognizing patterns. And guess what? That's a much more natural and way faster way to learn a language. So basically, you stop fighting your own brain. Instead of forcing yourself to memorize a bunch of boring rules, you're just letting your brain do what it's naturally good at, absorbing patterns from the sounds you hear. This is how you build that intuitive feel for what sounds right and get that deep, real comprehension without all the struggle. Now, this next part is really cool. For a lot of adult learners, there's a kind of secret weapon you might already have, especially if you happen to know any Chinese. It's like having a superpower for learning Japanese. Okay, so there are 2,136 of what are called Joyo kanji. These are the standard, essential characters you need for daily life in Japan. And yeah, that number looks pretty intimidating if you're starting from zero. But here's the thing. If you can read Chinese, you'll probably recognize the meaning of about 90% of them right off the bat. Seriously, you've already done most of the heavy lifting without even realizing it. And this is where that knowledge just explodes. See, each of those characters, you know, can be combined with others to create thousands and thousands of words. So that base of characters can suddenly unlock a vocabulary of 10, maybe even 20,000 words. It's a massive, massive advantage. Okay, let's tackle the one thing that trips almost everyone up. Grammar, right? The grammar drills, the charts, it's the worst part. Well, this method suggests something kind of radical. What if you just didn't study grammar at all? Let's look at an example from one of the audio stories. Now, I'll give you the translation. A film festival was being held in a small, beautiful town on the east coast of the earth. In a normal class, you'd have to memorize grammar charts for particles like no, ni, and de.
But with this method, you just hear them used in context over and over and over.
So what happens is you don't study the rules, you just absorb the patterns. You naturally start to get a feel for what those little particles do. You just know how they work without ever having to think about it. Grammar stops being a set of rules you have to look up and becomes something you just feel.
So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could just 10 minutes a day completely change how you learn a language forever? By focusing on listening, by working with our brain's natural abilities? Maybe, just maybe, we're tapping back into that effortless, almost joyful way we were all designed to learn in the first place.